Hello everybody. We are going to do homework number 1 on solving the quadratic formula. I'm going to do the odds and I'm going to leave it for you to do the evens. Are you ready? Number 1, we're first going to identify what's A, what's B, and what's C. A, B, and C are the numbers that are in front of the letters, as long as we have it in standard form. And we do, because look at the powers. It's second power, first power, no power. That's how we know we're in standard form. So the numbers are 1, 2, and negative 143. The first thing I like to do is calculate what's called the discriminant. The discriminant is the b squared minus 4ac part of the formula. So I'm going to plug that in. 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 143. Now, when you're on an iPhone calculating this, I'm going to be using a TI calculator. What I would recommend for you, if you have a computer, is use the Desmos Scientific Calculator. So 576. Now I'm going to do the entire quadratic formula. X is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Well, in this case, the variable is p. P equals negative b plus or minus the square root of, now I've already calculated b squared minus 4ac. That's 576 all over 2a. 576 is a perfect square. 24. So we got negative 2 plus or minus 24 over 2. Now this is like when we were completing the square. We're going to do it once with a plus and once with a minus. Negative 2 plus 24 over 2 will give us 22 over 2, or 11, and negative 2 minus 24 over 2, negative 26 over 2, or negative 13. So it looks like our answer is A. Why don't you pause the video, try number 2, come back and we'll do number 3. Okay, we're back. Now look at the type of answers we're getting. These answers are all decimal, so we're definitely going to need to use a calculator here. Our A value is 1. Our B value is negative 1. Our C value is also negative 1. We're going to do the discriminant. B squared minus 4ac. B squared minus 4ac is, now notice this, I'm going to square negative 1 and it's going to turn into a positive 1. Negative numbers, when they're squared, become positive. Minus 4ac. It's 1. Now notice the double negatives. Let me put my highlighter on those. There's 1 here and there's 1 here. So those two negatives are going to make it a positive and then a 4. So my discriminant is 5. That number, we can't take the square root and get a nice whole number from that. So that's called an irrational number. That's why all of the answers, if we go to decimal form, they've all been rounded. So I'm going to do the formula now. The variable is r. It's negative b. Look at that. If b is negative, you have a double negative, so it makes it positive. Plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. Or just 1 plus or minus square root of 5 over 2. I'm going to show you what that looks like on my calculator screen. I'm going to first start with parentheses for the top, because you see the calculator, when we say all over, the calculator doesn't know the difference between a longer division bar and a little short one. So we have to tell it by putting parentheses around the top. So there's my first answer. Let me get that straight. So 1.618. Now all I have to do is go back and edit what I just typed in, put a minus sign instead, and here's my other answer. Let's see. right about there. Negative 0.618. So let's see. Looks like the answer was A. Pause the video and try number 4. Look at the kind of answers that we're getting. They're imaginary. Some of them, 3 of them are imaginary. And the radicals are not simplified. So when we do the discriminant first, it will tell us whether we have whole number answer, irrational answer, imaginary answer. That's why it's called the discriminant. It helps us to discriminate what kind of solutions we're going to get. Okay, let's do it. A is 12. B is 4. C is 7. B squared minus 4AC is 4 squared minus 4 times 12 times 7. Okay, negative 320. We go to our formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root of negative 320 over 2, and a is 12. Okay, well, it looks like, for one thing, we have an imaginary answer, but we also need to simplify the square root of 320 because I don't see any 320s in the answer. There are some clues, though. The radicals contain 3, 14, 5, and look at the denominators. None of the denominators are 24 because you see this would be, if it was not simplified radical, this would be over 24. 320, about 32 times 10. 32 is 16 times 2, and 10 is 5 times 2. Now, there's a perfect square right there. And also, the two 2's together would make a 4, and that's a perfect square. So if I take the square root of 16, I take the square root of 4, it looks like 5 is going to be left over. That's a big clue to what the answer is. So this would be 4 times 2 times the square root of 5. This would be 8 square root of 5. Okay, come back over here. So we're going to replace, let's see, negative 4 plus or minus 8i radical 5 over 24. Now, in an earlier video, I showed you that you cannot just cancel out the 4 and the 24 like this and say 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 24 6, and then just leave it. You haven't given the number 8 the opportunity to be reduced as well. So we're going to have to also divide the 8 by 4 and write that as 2. Well, by now we ought to have figured out our answer. It's C. So expect a funny looking answer when you do number 6. Go ahead and pause the video now. Alright, coming back, just wanted to reinforce with you what the discriminant is so that if you see that on a test or something like that, you remember, okay, it's just the b squared minus 4ac part. It's the first part I do in the quadratic formula. So b squared minus 4ac is 3 squared. Oh, by the way, I kind of skipped this step. You can skip it once you get good. A is 7, B is 3, and C is also 3. So b squared minus 4ac. At this point, you can put this in the calculator. You don't have to compute it. Negative 75. 8's for you. The square. First step, take the number that's at the end, move it to the other side of the equation. K squared minus 8k equals 42. And you notice how I left a little gap there to complete the square. Now, take half of 8, which is 4, and square it. So in other words, I'm running it through this formula. Half of negative 8 squared. So it's going to be 16. That's the number that makes this factorable. Plus 16 plus 16. The number that completes the square is always positive. Okay, then our square becomes k minus the number that goes here is an always as well. It's always half of negative 8, or the number in that position, the b value. So k minus 4 squared is, let's see, that would be 58. So from this point on, we just take the square root of both sides. That's kind of a funny looking square root. K minus 4 is, don't forget your plus or minus. And one more thing, we're going to add 4 to both sides. 4 plus or minus radical 58. We're going to leave it like that. And you can leave it like that for number 10 as well. I wish you the best. If you need to get any help, contact me online, School Loop, or give me a text message. All right, we'll see you later.